Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Relationship Circle podcast. I'm your host, Beck Thompson, and this podcast is all about showing you how to stop running in circles, ditch those dating games, and let your inner compass lead the way. Today, we have Davina Hehn. So conscious to say it right. I need to do it more right on the podcast. How are you? Thanks for coming.
I am so well. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. I hope people, it's just mainly just audio, but you have the coolest background. So I hope one day we can get this. I mean, you'll see the reels, but it just looks so cool. It looks like a full on podcast studio. So let me tell you about Davina and then we can jump into the podcast. So Davina helps people stop blowing up, shutting down, or silently resenting in their relationships. Former therapist, now mental health coach. She's here to help you unlearn the patterns keeping you disconnected. So I actually just want to jump straight into what are these patterns? What are the patterns that keep us disconnected so that people can raise their awareness on where they might be stuck in this?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a broad statement.
Yes, it is.
And it's because many of us have different patterns, right? And so I don't think that there's really anyone in particular that works against us. What I see within my clients and within my own marriage the most are definitely patterns of self-sabotage. Just self-preservation, just on steroids. It's overprotective, and poor expectation management, right? The fear of conflict, the avoidance of conflict, the people pleasing. That's really just manipulation. There's so many different ways that we present, whether we're dating or whether we're in long-term relationships, that are attempts at connection and instead breed disconnection. And so it's really just wherever you find yourself oh, I did it again. I said that I wouldn't do this, and yet I'm right back here. Or when we're in the dating world, we think this one will be different, and then it pretty much ends the same way, that I could replace that person I dated with any of the other people I dated, and the story stays the same.
Yes.
What is that? And that's really what we try to get to the root of and determine what to do with it after that.
Yeah. Okay. So if people this is so common, right? Definitely the people that I work with and I'm sure the people listening notice they're repeating these same patterns over and over again in dating. And I do want to get to relationships because I think it's actually really important that we talk about, once you're in the relationship, how you can also recognize and stop these things. But what do they do? When they recognize that they're, let's say, I was trying to think of a client I had this morning because we were talking about this morning, but let's say I quite often have people that are repeating the same pattern of having emotionally unavailable men, that they say, This is all I'm attracting is emotionally unavailable men. They're never there. They seem like they are. And sometimes it starts out different, but then in the end, they're it's the same thing. What happens? They're aware of the pattern, but what do they do next?
Yeah. So here's the challenge, and it almost is an illusion, right? That we recognize the pattern, but we recognize the after effect of that pattern. So the after effect is that I'm chasing emotionally unavailable men, or I attract emotionally unavailable men, but that's not the pattern. The pattern is that I'm seeking them and I'm actively attracted to unavailable people.
Yeah.
And so then that becomes the pattern that we dip down into, right? So then we would kind of go into that part of what is that makes me attracted to them? And then sometimes even just acknowledging that I'm attracted to that type of person who will harm me so deeply eventually that can feel gross. And so then we make it about them. Right? It's their issues, it's their trauma, it's their emotional unavailability, it's their trauma from their past. It's all of this dissection that we do of them, when in reality it's, okay, well, I'm seeking this, I'm wanting this, and if I'm attracted to emotionally unavailable people, I'm likely emotionally unavailable as well. So
and that can be a hard pill to swallow, hey?
Oh, God, it was so gross for me when I had this realization. It was when I realized that my wounds were choosing my partners, not me. It was a really gross thing to sit in. And then it was really hard for me to not blame myself and then decide that I'm the unlovable version, or I'm just this person who's never going to find love, who's not going to do these things, right? When in reality, it's I have a need that I'm trying to meet. I just don't know the solution that I'm supposed to meet it with. And thus I create the same cycle.
I want you to keep going, but what you just said is really beautiful, because I think that when you had that statement at the end around like, this is the need that I'm trying to meet, that's you looking at it without the shame, that shame lens that maybe you've previously had on it around like, what's wrong with me? And because it's so easy to then get stuck in your own spiral around like, oh, it's never going to happen for me, poor me, etc. Or what you're saying before, and it's all them, or it's all men, like all men are emotionally unavailable, and it's a societal problem and we need to change society. And yeah,
entirely. There's what oftentimes happens is we confuse chaos for excitement. And I mean, my husband was deeply emotionally unavailable when we met. Like, it's like, in retrospect, it was clear as day. And because I was being like breadcrumbed, not intentionally, but just because he can only meet me at the depth that he met himself, right? There was that part that I found his inconsistency intoxicating. Right? It kept it quote unquote exciting when really it was just so hard for me to regulate myself. I was becoming more and more anxiously attached with each one of his kind of ways that he was deeply inconsistent. And so when I started really acknowledging this, and what I always recommend for people once they acknowledge this, it's without that shame. Without putting that shame away and not ignoring it, like giving it life, acknowledging it, giving it the microphone every so often, and then choosing what to do with it. Without being able to get really good at that practice, we will continue to repeat patterns. Because the patterns that harm us are being fed by shame. Because if I don't think that I'm worthy of this, if I think that I'm a poor judge of character, I will stay that way. I will become one because I lean into what's familiar, which is the harm, which is the emotional unavailability, which is the anxious attachment and the low feelings of self-worth. So it's these types of things that it becomes this vicious circle, when in reality, all we're trying to do is love and be loved. We don't know how to quite yet, because I'm just inherently thinking I'm unlovable.
Yeah. How do you, like, if people are really stuck in that thought or thoughts that it's kind of this real core belief that they're unlovable or unworthy, or like, how do they even get to see the light that there's a possibility for change in there?
Man, I grappled with this for decades. Like, I didn't know how to do that for myself. I was my own big troll, and I thought like I wasn't, but really 100% I was.
Yeah.
The thing that I think works for any of us is to just stay curious, to like open up the possibility that I am lovable.
I just want to quickly pause the episode here to tell you about my upcoming free Love Unlocked Masterclass. Maybe the reason you haven't found love is because you feel you aren't worthy of love you deserve. And I'm here to tell you that you are, and I want to give you the steps on how you can start loving yourself first to attract that worthy love into your life. In the masterclass, I cover 3 steps straight away, which are uncovering past patterns, understanding emotional needs, and learning how to communicate and set boundaries to amplify your self-worth. Details can be found in the show notes, and I cannot wait to see you there.
Not even, because what we see on social media and all of this is just like, love yourself. And it's like, no, bitch, I have to tolerate myself first. I had to learn how not to hate myself. I had to learn how to take other people's advice and observations of me when they were positive and believe them, and not ruminate on the times that they said something negative, or I got the impression that maybe they might think something negative of me. Right? It's just starting with the openness that, oh, maybe I'm not terrible. Maybe I am worthy of this. Maybe I do hold value outside of who my partner is or whether I have one at all. And one of the best practices that I started doing was either keeping like a mental image of myself. Like, I think a lot of us go back, and when we think about us as kids, there's almost like a school picture or some sort of image that we get right away. And I have one from 3rd grade. And I don't even know where this photo is, but I can just like picture her And each time that I thought about myself in a poor way, I would literally close my eyes and picture her and just be like, what are you doing? Like at that age, she was getting bullied by everyone else. And now me as an adult, I'm going to sit there and continue to bully her. Like she's still me. I'm her. I'm from her. And so there was those kinds of things that the more kind of objective we could get of ourselves, the better. Right? Like if I'm saying that, I'm not saying me in third grade, I'm saying her. Like an entity from me. And then I also chose that day, the day that I was like, okay, maybe I can get curious about being someone different and allowing for myself to be someone different. I immediately changed how I refer to her. Right? Like this previous version of me that was so deeply wounded and had such low value and worth and efficacy, I refer to by my maiden name. Even though I was married when I made this choice, like I was already within this, but she's the one who built that. And so I refer to her as Davina Sheba. Like Sheba is my maiden name. She was the one who was built that way. And now it's more so like, okay, well, this version of Davina Hehn is doing things differently. What did Sheba need? What was she working to do that she didn't get? What kind of wounds did she have that she just didn't quite know how to heal? And if we can kind of separate those things and keep the empathy, the compassion of picturing this younger version and all of that kind of all in one, it's a really solid first step that doesn't feel like I have to white knuckle or toxic positivity my way into actually viewing myself better.
Yeah. I love that so much because there does seem to be this like complete swing from like, you know, if you hate yourself, then just stare in the mirror and naked and tell yourself that you love all of you. And like, I say that, like that maybe word I say all the time to my clients because I'm like, maybe that's the door. Like, what if? Like, maybe, like, let's add in these words of like possibility to open the door just a little bit. Like, if there's a little bit of a crack in the door, the door can get wider and wider instead of it being completely shut. It's so massive that it doesn't have to be one way or the other. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. There's a lot of this that when we find ourselves repeating these patterns, we tend to think in black and white. We tend to think in all or nothing blanket statements. And so, yeah, I love that it's like what you're saying is of the possibility language because it is. It is just as realistic that you are wonderful as you are convincing yourself that you're terrible. It's just as realistic that things can go well as they can go poorly.
Yeah.
And so once we just open up that possibility, like you said, once we just acknowledge that there's more truth here and logic here, that hopefully that part of my brain can kind of override my emotional brain just a little bit at a time.
I'm so fascinated, and please tell me if you don't want to go here, that's totally fine. But you met your husband and he was emotionally unavailable and you were saying that you were as well. So like and you're together obviously now. So tell me, I would love to hear a bit about this journey about, you know, the work that you did once you were in this relationship and where, like what happened and how did you get there? Tell me everything.
Oh my gosh. It was a complete shit show. So we were young. We were like early 20s. We were friends for a few years first. And I was somebody who was convinced I was super emotionally available. Only because I knew how to like get into the depths of the shit and talk about emotions really well and really easily and hold space for other people's. But I intellectualized them. And I also ran away from them. Like drinking was part of my personality at that point. Right. So I also grew up in Las Vegas. So I can think of that also. Like why that was so easy for me to do. So when he and I got together, it was that hardship of my thinking that I was really present. And I was in those moments for others and for him, just not for myself. And so when I started experiencing distressing things, I tend to either talk about them to such a great length that I think I'm expressing myself and I think I'm feeling it, or just run away from myself and be like, well, I know I was going to feel that. So like, let me go this way. Like there was almost so much acknowledgement and so much awareness of the fact that I was so emotionally unaware that it worked against me. And so when he and I got together, it was really quick overnight. We were really good friends. I felt very strongly for him. He felt very strongly for me. Neither one of us told a soul. I didn't tell my best friend. And then he admitted it to me one night. We met up for a drink like we always did. And he was like, I'm in love with you and I want to be with you. And I was like, oh my God, me too. This is wild. So we ended up together, like just friends down to committed overnight.
Wow.
Yeah, it was gnarly. And so we also were together for 6 months and we broke up for 6 months because he was too emotionally unavailable. So it was that part that it was funky. It's like he would show up for me at times and then distance and then just kind of fuck up and not choose me. And then I would lean in because I wasn't being chosen and I just like needed to know that I was important to him. And it was just this kind of dynamic. And we got back together and, you know, things just moved so quickly. But what the long and short of it ended up being that we would argue. I would try to talk about feelings typically. And then he would quite literally run away. I would chase him down stairwells, down streets, down blocks, down hotel room hallways, like everything, and just beg for him to stay there because it made more sense to me. It made me feel safer and closer to him, chosen, if he were actively in conflict, actively yelling at me, if we were going back and forth. That made me feel more comfortable and more safe when he took 10 minutes outside to calm down. I didn't know how to carry that. And also in those moments when I look back, and this is where I'm recognizing my own emotional unavailability, is that I could not be okay until I knew that he and I were, until I knew that he would come back, until I knew that I was chosen. Then I was like, okay, cool, I'm choosable. But once he left, all bets were off. Your girl would spiral and, you know, call him nonstop, search for him nonstop. I just like didn't know. Like, crazy.
I'm laughing because this was my relationship before everyone, for context, before we hopped on this. I'm like crying. This is so funny. Before we hopped on this podcast and when we first started chat, I was like, I think we're like the same human. Yes. You're telling this story and I was like, this is what happened to me. And I met my husband when I was 17 and like we've been through this as well. And I was that person. I remember calling him. I thought he was dead. I'd call. The amount of calls that he would have on his log and he'd just be like ignoring. Wow. Anyway, please continue.
No, but I think sometimes when we don't talk about our unhinged moments out loud, we feel like we're the only ones who are a little bit like crazy in those moments. I would actively feel crazy. Like I felt like until I could get this regulation from him, this reassurance from him, I would lose my mind. I would self-doubt, like I would doubt every single part of myself, of my thought processes. I would go back and assume that maybe I was wrong for even voicing complaints. Yeah. And it was just the more I voice, the farther he gets from me. And so, girl, just stop talking. Stop voicing complaints, right? And then I'm also quick to resentment. And so if I'm not voicing complaints, then I'm building resentment and then the complaints are going to come out in a really shitty way. And then I end up manifesting my own fears because then I can't bring him complaints in good ways. It ends up in a fight and then the cycle continues. Yeah. And so little by little, I started getting better at tolerating the distance. Not really. If I'm being completely honest, it was like very, very little, but he and I both knew that we always loved each other really hard. And at the root of our marriage, of our relationship has always been friendship. And that's kind of what I think pulled us back each and every time. It's just the longer we go, it's like I don't know how much longer I can do this shit. We've now been together 13 years and I can't imagine us still doing this back and forth in the same way that we did even 4 years ago. So our biggest thing 4 years ago, and a little bit before that too, but we had kids. We became parents and everything changed. So much changed. And so in the beginning, when things weren't working and he was being emotionally unavailable and I was just like leaning all the way in, I would make these threats of like, well, this just isn't good enough for me. And then I don't know, maybe this isn't for us. Or maybe, you know, like always throwing out those like, just get scared, dude. Just get scared enough to lean in so that we can get what we both want, which is connection. And it wasn't until we became parents that my kind of quote unquote threats became actual realistic ones. Like before it was like, okay, I'm going to make this threat, but like, please don't call me on it. Like, I'm not going to go anywhere. We both know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, because we had kids involved, and I don't know, there was just something about like watching my kids be affected in this way that then when I would tell him like, hey, this is just not going to work for me, I think he also got the same vibe that was like, try me. Like, I don't want to do this alone, but I will. And so then it's almost like the more confident I got in my ability to navigate my life without him, the harder he leaned in. And when it comes to people with emotional unavailability or those who are attracting it, that's usually what we see is that we think if we just lean in far enough, hard enough, wholly enough, that they will see like, damn, she's a ride or die. Damn, like she's the best. What am I thinking? Not connecting with her, not committing to her, all of this. But in reality, each time that they distance and we cling, that tells them that like, okay, this must be okay. I must not be doing anything that's that wrong. And it's only really through fear that we see what we're really made of individually and also as in a partnership. And that's really where that came to be. And now my husband is 4 years sober. Thank God. Thank him. Thank everything. And our relationship has taken a completely different path because we both chose 4 years ago to rewrite our entire narrative. That like we weren't saving any marriage from before. We are going into something completely new and different. And that's when, you know, of course, everything changed for us. And now, I mean, the man is incredibly emotionally available. We still have these challenges, but he had to choose that. And he had to get scared enough of losing what we had and the potential of what we could have in order to do the work and get into his own body. And I also had to understand what I was doing that contributed poorly to our dynamic.
Yeah. Because there's two people in it, right? Like it's so easy. Like I work with a lot of couples and it's so easy to have one person come to me first and put it all on the other person or take it entirely on themselves. And like it's always a dynamic in play that can shift when one person makes a change as well.
Well, yeah. And I mean, for a while, my husband he was more obviously problematic with like anger management challenges and these types of things that I was like, dude, you're the problem. You carry the spotlight. I'm going to like sit back over here, like in the audience eating popcorn. Like I'm going to take all of that. And that's where once I got trained in anger management, which just for funsies, I went into anger management in an attempt to fix him because he was refusing to work with anyone. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to infiltrate from within. I'm like, I'm going to know exactly what I can fix this man. It's like this.
Such a coach. I'm going to I've got this. Don't need to outsource it.
He was unwilling to have it outsourced. And I want this man so bad. I love him so much. And I know the soul that he has and the man that he is. And so like, I'm going to make sure I get in there. I'm going to parasite my ass. Like I'm going to make sure I can get all the way in. And then it was during this training, day one, I think like 2 hours in that we were learning about conflict styles and boundaries. And I sat there and just had this like the whole room zooms in on me moment where I was like, oh my God, I'm the problem too. Like I thought it was all him. I thought I was going to come here, get validated that he's the problem. And then it was unavoidable. I was like, oh, okay. No wonder the man's running. I'm chasing him. No wonder he's like hitting the wall. I'm trapping him. I won't let him leave. I will literally block the doorway and this man is trapped because he's not going to put his hands on it. I'm like, great. Good for him. Like I would have if it were me. Reverse, like the amount of self-restraint that he carried, that he showed is incredible because then it would have been like, you put your hands on me, you know, the man in. Yeah. So that part of like just realizing this, but it was that of like, okay, if we are in a problematic dynamic, I'm contributing to. Yeah. And it was so easy to allow for him to carry the weight, and he realistically would have. And so when he found sobriety, when he started working through it actively, then it wasn't enough for him to do the work because I was still back here not. So I really had to look at what are my patterns, what's my codependency, what's my attachment, what are my my wounds that are tolerating this kind of behavior and tolerated it for so long. Like never once did I think like maybe this isn't good for me. Like I should venture out of this marriage. Maybe this marriage isn't for me, right? For the most part, it was just like I want this, like just laser focused on making this work. And that's what I think is the hard part about the emotional unavailability of kind of mix and matching people, but the narrative stays the same, is we tend to put most of the emphasis on other people and what their shortcomings are, their character defects, and not enough on me and what I'm seeking and what I'm allowing to continue.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. I think it's so cool. I love when I work with single women and I can see that pattern of like when they do the inner work and they keep dating. Like I usually like them to date while they're doing the work, because then I actually get real feedback in time of like what is happening. Is the work working? Because then the people that they bring into their lives and who they're choosing is different each time, and it feels like they just step up and up and up and up till they're like, oh, this is a different relationship. This is so cool. Like it's like this giant experiment that I'm playing as a coach of like, let's do the work and then let's see if the work works, and then I've got this proof that it does, because look at the people that you're bringing in and how different they are to the last guy.
Yeah. And I mean, we need more evidence, right?
Yes.
As we're doing the work. And as you know, when we're working with our clients, they get this full chest moment. They're like, I can do this.
Yeah.
And then when they're left to themselves, we're going to revert into old patterns, our old wiring, our autopilot will kick in. And so I love that it's like a constant, okay, let's gather evidence and really put yourself into practice. Like, I'm not going to walk onto the Olympic track. Like, I got to practice here. Like, I'm going to have to run sprints. And that's really all we can do is continue trialing and erroring.
Yeah. I love the story of you and your husband, because it feels like you would have such great strength now having gone through that. Like I feel like in my marriage, what has really strengthened us have been those really hard times where you're like, are we going to make it through? You know, like we're committed and I love you, but I don't know, like, are we going to do this? And also just highlighting that like growth doesn't always work simultaneously. Like sometimes one of you takes a step forward and then the next person and the next, like it takes, just because you start doing the work and the other person isn't yet does not mean that they're not going to. So often I see like one person doing the work and then they give up right before that other person is going to step up to do the work. Like you feel like they're so close and they almost self-sabotage it. They're like, well, they're not doing it. They're not contributing to the work. I'm the one doing everything, so I'm out.
100%. Yeah. And that's where I think it's because doing this kind of work with us is more reactive than proactive. And so a lot of the time, by the time I find my clients, by the time my clients find me, they're already pretty much at the end of their rope and they've tied that last knot and they're slipping, right? And so there's really only so much that we can do at that point, that then it's like, do you really want them to change, or are you kind of hoping that they don't so you can have an out? Right? Like we see that a lot, where I see that a lot, especially because my main focus is anger management. I would get the vast majority, 80% of my clients are men on the tail end of an ultimatum. And by the time
my wife's told me I have to find someone and you're it.
Quite literally. Yeah. And that's why I tend to keep openings in my schedule, because it's usually like, I need to find someone today. I've been procrastinating.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, it's now or never. Do you have room? And I'm like, yep, I had a feeling. Sure. Like, come on in. Because this is the kind of work that people don't view as helpful, as beneficial, until they're on the verge of breaking. And I'm not a car person. My whole thing is, I don't know what happens if I don't get an oil change, because I go in for maintenance, right? Yep. And that's kind of what it is. It's like they forego all of this maintenance until it's on the verge of breaking down. Yeah. And then again, there's so much pressure on the work, on that. And then it's like, oh, well, therapy didn't work for me. Coaching didn't work for us. Versus like, okay, well, were you done already? Yeah. And what does that even look like? And so a lot of the women who catalyzed these transformations in these men ended up becoming kind of the problem in the relationship because now they don't have any room left to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to give him any credit for the work that he's doing because it's too little too late.
Yeah.
There's
And
too
it's not
much
enough. Hey. Yeah.
apathy. Yeah. And it's not fast enough.
Not fast enough. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So we start way too late.
Yeah.
And that's like, if there was anything that I wish people would do is like just go to one session a year.
Yeah.
Just go in for maintenance just to get somewhere to see what that looks like. But a lot of the time it's not that bad. Yeah. It's like, well, if we compare that to anything else that we seek out a specialist for, we're not going to wait until it gets that bad. But here we do.
Yeah, I wish we could change the stigma around that because it's, I've recently done some work with couples like prior to marriage and it's so much easier because there's so much hope. There's not that resentment. They want to learn the skills. They're very coachable, and the speed at which the work and the relationship changes is so dramatically faster than when you're coming to me and you've got so much resentment and you almost hate the other person and you want me to save you somehow in this, you know what, me to somehow save this marriage when it's not, this is on you, but it's just, it's very, very, very different. So I agree. I wish that people would understand that one, we don't get taught this stuff. We don't get taught how to communicate. We don't get taught how to do conflict. We learn from the people that we see, which is often very flawed. And two, you're then joining with another human that has very different ideals of how to do that. So like, even if you grew up in the same household, you have different ideas about how to do conflict and communication.
Right.
So I don't know why we expect it just to work. Like it's just so insane to me that we will do, you're right, the car, the PT, the health coach, that like everything we will do because we don't have the skills to do it, but yet we're supposed to just understand how to do relationships.
Yeah. And all of it, right? Like my God, the conflict tolerance. So I know it's conflict resolution, conflict management. My main focus when I'm working with really anyone, because it's relationship conflict, professional, familial, friendship, it's a lot of those. It's conflict tolerance. Like we just need to build your tolerance to even consider the idea of conflict. Right? I'm not just trying to like resolve it at the end. We've already muddied it so much in the beginning that I really had to reframe the way that I even view conflict at all. Because a lot of this, and you know, I'll get clients who come in who end up saying, well, it's so weird. Like the first few years, we just didn't fight at all.
Yeah.
It was great. And I'm like, oh my God, that should have been your, there's your sign. There's your sign. Because you're both faking it so hard. And conflict is healthy. It's helpful. It shows us where we need to make some modifications. But if we're either lying to ourselves or the other, by the time these modifications come up, we have no idea where to start because there's so many to go through. And then again, it's like it gets to be this insurmountable thing of like, well, if we go in there, what's going to come out of it?
Yeah.
And so many clients end up saying like, okay, well, actually, I know that we said that we want to sign on, but we're not going to. We think this is making our relationship worse.
Oh, so we'll just ignore it.
Well, okay. All right, that's fine. Like you do you. I'm ready when and if you're ready. Maybe I'm not the right fit for you. Let's find you a new provider. Like I'm always trying to be a bit more proactive of like, maybe it's my approach. Maybe it's our dynamic within us. Maybe it's how we're doing this. Let's get you though where you're trying to go. Because if therapy or coaching is making your relationship worse, it just means that in here we're digging up. Can I curse on here? I didn't even ask.
Yes,
and I've just
go for
like sailor. Okay. We're like digging up shit and then walking around the rest of the time acting like nobody smells anything. And it's like, how do we do that? You want to go back to the illusion of peace instead of doing the work to actually achieve it. Yeah. Yeah, it's rough.
It's so true. It's like when I have couples that are going well and they have like maybe like I like to start off weekly with people, and so say they get to this space where they might come on weekly and like everything was great this week. We don't really have anything to talk about. I mean, there's always something to talk about. But then so they go, well, we'll just push it out. Now we can definitely go like a month. And I'm like, okay, I'm just letting you know that I'm leaving a space open in the calendar because you're probably going to like, if you go a month, amazing. And then they come back in a week. We didn't make it. Like, no, because everyone has these cycles where things are good and not good. And it's almost like when things are good, this is when I want you to engage in the deeper work because you're more open to each other. You're more available to listen to each other and to understand each other. So this is when I actually need you to have the harder conversations because there's more availability there.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild. They treat us, they treat it like we're in ER, right?
Yes.
Like only coming in if things are really bad. But it's like, I'm going to go back out there and still ride my bike without a helmet.
Yeah.
I'm like,
it's so true. I know I cut my head open. Please fix it.
Yeah, like I need a stitch. I'm like, okay. You know, and I mean, there really is that. And so when it comes to any of the work that we're doing, I think a lot of it ends up being kind of frustration with the fact that this isn't as tangible as most other things that we work on. Right? Like you go to a doctor, you get a script, you take the med, you start feeling better pretty quickly. And this can take so long and it can be such a slow burn.
Yeah.
And the changes that we make can sometimes just be so abstract that we want to see some concrete results. Like give me something tangible. And that's where I think a lot of the expectation is poor because we don't really know what the expectation will be.
Yes.
And I have this very anecdotal theory, but it seems to check out. And I'm curious if this will match for you, is I attribute or I suggest that they plan for 1 month for every year that they've been this way, that they've been with their partner, whatever that is, of the continuous work until things start to feel more automatic. And so if I'm a single woman who's been dating the same kind of guy and I'm 35, it'll take me roughly 4 years of doing this consistent work for me to start feeling like a completely new and different version of myself.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't mean that like it won't hit until then. Like we'll start getting these experiences, but there really is this whole overall transformation that it does feel that way, that like I have my own work to do. They have theirs and then we have ours. And like my individual stuff that ended up presenting in the relationship like a relationship problem when it was really just a me and my problem is wild. And so if I have roughly 4 years of my own work to do and you do too, depending on the age, whatever, and then we've been together roughly 10 years, then it's like, okay, well, we have roughly a year of our stuff to really work through. And then we each have our own individually. And we have to, it will take years. Took me 36 years to get here. It's probably going to take me a little bit longer for me to get through.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting what you said before about the doctor or like coming to fix, because I think that when people don't love doing work and longer term work. And so it's the same with any kind, if I'm thinking about like when people want to make a change in their health, they'd much like Ozempic is such a massive thing now, right? Like everyone would much rather take a pill than do the actual work of what it is to change. Because I often said, I had this chat with a friend the other day about, she's from the UK and she's like, all my friends are on Ozempic over there or whatever the other version is of it. And she's like, everyone like just looks ridiculously thin now. And she's like, I'm almost jealous. And I'm like, it's so, I cannot wait to track down in the path in years when people have not done any belief work or inner work or subconscious work around what health is or what this means to them. And they're just changing this outer experience, because you see it all the time with, I have any expertise on weight loss, but I've seen it with a few people where they have the weight loss surgery where they staple your stomach and then years later the person's back to the same weight because they haven't done any changes in their life. Yeah. So like this is almost the same thing. You have everything that is worth it takes a bit of work and like effort.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm very much a shortcut person.
Yeah, me too.
Back in the day, the things that I considered, I am like, gosh, I'll admit this out loud. I never have. Do you remember in Wedding Crashers when he like puts the eye drops in his drink?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he puked for 3 days. Maybe like, how dangerous is this? It's just like these types of things that I actually Googled. And so I'm like, well, maybe I can look into what I'm eating. Or maybe I can actually do the work. Like and given that's so just not healthy at all, I'm very much a quick fix person.
Yeah.
And I get so impatient about things too. And that's where I think it's, we have to kind of set ourselves up for this expectation that it'll take a while. And so I have these different mantras that I share with myself whenever I get a bit impatient. And one of them is, if you're going to be here, be here. The other is, the time's going to pass anyway. Really. So like I can be impatient and suffer for much longer and then prolong it and then be even that much more upset that I didn't start sooner, or I can just kind of little bit now. And then I'm an 80-20 person at this point. I used to be all or nothing. Yeah. It starts on Monday, binge this weekend or, you know, whatever. And it's really just having some of those mantras, whatever works for us to remind us of what's happening. Whenever me and my husband argue now and things just seem uncomfortable and I lean into my more anxious tendencies, I remind myself that like whatever is there in our relationship, whatever cracks exist are there, and whatever isn't. And I trust us and I trust me to be able to navigate it.
Yeah.
That like through everything else, this is something else for us to get through. And to your point earlier, the crises that we experience that are like the bottom of the bottom end up being some of the greatest things. Right? Like 4 years ago, my husband and I were very near separation. We were separating our rooms in the home. We were talking about what it would be like to co-parent our kids, where each of us will live, when we'll introduce our future partners to our kids. We were going over all of these topics, and it was only right then, of course, that we made these decisions. And now I look back on it, it was almost 2 weeks ago. It was 4 years exactly. And we were talking about like just how grateful we are for that experience, because at the time it was so atrocious and it felt like it was just destroying our soul and the sanctity of our relationship. Like the foundation of it was getting rocked, but it needed to be so that we could build something new and different. And that's kind of just what I try to remind ourselves, is that like there has to be good in each one of these tragedies and these crises. And so like, what can we take out of it that we with us, so that we don't just get bogged down in the fact that it's happening at all, that we lose sight of what's coming up next.
Yeah. Yeah. You just reminded me of the quote that you put in when you filled out the podcast form, which I think is from Esther Perel. You know, most of us will have multiple relationships, and I'm going to butcher this. Most of us will have multiple relationships in our life, and quite often with the same person, you know, and I think that is so. If I speak to anyone who's had a longer term relationship, there is multiple versions of you, and it's a constant choice to come back to each other and to like, can we get through this storm together? Like, and I hope that people understand the amount of effort that goes into long-term relationships, because I think people often look at my husband and I and go, oh, you're so lucky. You've got a really good relationship. I'm like, I don't know that we're lucky. Like sometimes we have really hard times. This has taken a lot of work and effort and growth constantly. Like my husband gets over the amount of growth. He's like, can we just stop growing for a bit? And I'm like, sure, you can have a break. Because I'm constantly being like, now, what can we improve here? And he's like, can we just settle into what we have right now? But I think there's this throwaway society that's happening a little bit in terms of, because there's so many options out there, and there's always, like even dating apps, there's so many next that people are searching for this perfection that in a human, and they want it to be easy. And there's this like almost a lie that gets thrown around that like, if it's your person, it should feel easy and right. And that's just not true. So when they get to the hard part and they get to the struggle in the relationship, they're like, what is this? This isn't right. This mustn't be my person. Right?
Right. This must not be right for us. And oh my gosh, I completely agree with that. And yeah, I'm on my second marriage, same husband, right? Like that's very much how we view it. And it's interesting because last year, well, there's 2 points I want to make, but I'm going to go down branches. Okay.
Yeah.
One is how different people will view these things. And the other is how many of us can grapple with this of, am I asking for too much or am I settling?
Yes.
Sometimes we just get scared of like, what does that look like? And even for me and my husband, I can make plenty of arguments of why we should have separated and like where we could be now. And my whole thing is just path of least regret. Like this feels like the path of least regret for me. And so long as it does for him too, we're in. And last year, my husband and I were having more rocky times, just new and different experiences, and we weren't managing it super well. And I talked to 2 of my girlfriends about it. One of them said, how much is enough? Like, when do you call it quits? Like, how many times are you and him, of course, too, going to like fight and modify and change and like put each other through shit. Like how many more times is this going to take? And when will you call it? And then my other girlfriend and I, when I talk to her, she literally cries and is like, I just think it's so beautiful that you guys continue to work on your marriage. And so it's like, it's really just depending on who you talk to. It really just depends what's coming up for you. And one of the biggest things that I suggest is that you surround yourself with people whose relationships you would want to emulate. And or for you and your partner, like this is what I have all of my couples do. I ask them to choose someone either in their lives or fictional that has a relationship that you would want to emulate. And then we kind of pick that apart and we see what themes do they carry, what patterns, what characteristics do they have, and what is it about that one that you really do like. So that you kind of have this more tangible expectation of what this could be. And also you might have a differing opinion of what a good relationship looks like. And what just conflict naturally and they both can't exist in that way. So it's so hard for us to know. But my whole thing is, if this feels like the path of least regret, if the version of you a year from now would be more likely to thank you than be disappointed in you. But this whole grappling of like, am I asking for too much or am I settling can be something that just like eats us alive.
It just feels like I always encourage like all my clients that are dating to like really early on have these hard conversations around like all of this stuff. Like, how do you, like, what is a good relationship to you? What are your values? How do you handle conflict? Like, get put in conflict situations. I always tell people to go on a date that's going to induce stress. so weird, but like a panic room or like, then you'll see how this person handles stress. I'm like, how cool that you get to see really early on, because then you like if you can have these conversations early on around what this looks like, because we just don't have them. Like no one has the conversation around what monogamy is. No one has the conversation around what a relationship should look like. Even me and my husband, we'd been together like a long time. And it was only like last year that we had the conversation around like, what did dinner time look like at your house when you were a kid? Because we've had he kept telling our little boy to be quiet and not talk at the dinner table. And that's how he grew up. The dad like just liked to eat and didn't talk, and everyone was in silence and they just ate their food. And my family, we discussed our whole day. It was the time where we came together and talked. So it was the complete opposite of like how we grew up. So I was so confused as to why he was telling him to be quiet. Because I'm like, no, we discuss what we did in our day. And I had never noticed till we had a kid and the kid doesn't stop talking. But it's just like, if we'd had that conversation early on, not that we got together at 17, so possibly wouldn't have had that conversation, but it's just like those kind of things to be curious about, because then you learn about the other person, and not like there's no right way. I'm not saying his way's right or my way's right or wrong, etc. It's like, how can we now make this work for our family coming from these two different perspectives?
Yeah. And you bring up such a good point, because one, I got a little excited. I probably just like blew out your ear with my yes about the panic room thing, because I think it's phenomenal advice. And I usually whenever my friends are dating someone new or family members dating someone new and they're like, oh, like I want you to meet them. I love them, I'm like, have you fought with them yet? What are they like when they harm you, and what happens when you harm them? How do we behave in these ways? And until you know what that looks like, until you've seen each other in some level of overwhelm or frustration within like a escape room, whatever this is, you really don't know. And not that we hide our true colors in that way. It's just when we get offended, when we get overwhelmed, when we get harmed, we act out from our wounds and like how wounded are each of us and what do we need to do to heal. And that's really just, man. And that's why I work primarily with parents, not on parenting, not in how they should parent better, more so just the person who happens to be a parent, because parenting overwhelms so many of our ability to cope that then the relationship changes in so many ways, and then everything becomes about the kids. And I'm more so within like, okay, let's get us regulated. Right. So we have these groups that are starting, and it's parents, and then the other group is just us as individuals of like, how do we regulate our emotions? How do we lean into these things and live with more authenticity and awareness of ourselves? So choose a partner that feels more right for us. We choose relationships that are worth fighting for within, so that we don't just end up fighting with them and then having to move on. And so that's really at like the root of it. And that's why even you mentioned my website earlier, because that's what it is. Like this transitional character work of being the one who rewrites the narrative of your bloodline, of your family members, of your nuclear family, of your relationship, right? It's just being open to being that one. And it's such a hard thing to do. And then, like these dinner things. And then the whole idea of like, well, this is how I was raised, right? Your husband with the quiet dinner table. Okay, well, that's what you're conditioned to do. But did you like it? Wished for something different? Did you like having to be the one who was super quiet? Were you craving more connection during those times? And just because that's how we were raised doesn't mean it's how we have to stay.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
What was the end result of it? May I ask?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's just kind of a combination of both, to be honest. It's just like, as long as he's eating his food, he can have a conversation. So I think I think my husband was getting more frustrated because it was taking hours for him to eat his dinner because he just wants to talk the entire time and give me a cuddle and tell me he loves me. Like he's just to distract us all in those times.
Yeah.
So like it was just a combination of both, to be honest. Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, very interesting.
That's very good. We started implementing, I got it from my sister, we started implementing everyone takes a bite and then we can go around and ask a question. And after each bite, we can like, just so that we're encouraging this, that our food doesn't get cold because we're getting so distracted with conversation.
That's a great idea. Thank you so much. We could talk for feels like we've been talking for 10 minutes. So thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Anything additional that you would like to add that you haven't spoken about that is burning topic for you?
Not really. I think it's more so just allowing for people to embrace this work and choose that even if things feel fine, that's the best time to come in and get a bit of some balance going and run an assessment on yourself to see what this looks like. And if there's anything I wish people would do is just be open to becoming emotionally literate in the same way that we learn how to read. Let's do that for how we feel and how we interact in the world. And I'd imagine we would all experience much less suffering.
Yes, it's so true. I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast, but we've got a cake book. I don't think I've ever got it here. And I obviously over talk about feelings with my child. And there's a page with cupcakes on the page, and it's about different hairstyles on the cupcakes, but he thinks they're the feeling cupcakes. He's like, there's the sad cupcake and the angry cupcake. It's so funny.
It's so good. And that's why I love movies like Inside Out. I
love Inside Out. The best. If you have not seen Inside Out, please, as an adult, watch it. It is so important. Like just even having that understanding, like I know we're wrapping up, but even having the understanding of like how you feel. Like often when I'm talking to male clients to like get them to even use I feel statements, they don't even know how they feel before they say the I feel statements. So I'm like, you just have to even acknowledge what the feeling is for yourself in your own body to, even if you don't say it out loud, just acknowledge that you're angry or you're jealous or you're happy, whatever it is. It's just, we're just so unaware of how to name those emotions.
Oh, 100%. And allowing for more to be true at the same time.
Yes. Oh my goodness, that's a whole other topic. Anyway, this is so good. So good.
I'm going to keep like bringing us back in.
So good. Thank you. All your things are going to be in the show notes, but please tell everyone how they can find you and work with you and be in your orbit.
Beautiful. Yes. So any of my handles are A Steady Space. It's the name of my practice. Come on in, get some balance, and then go back out into the world. So that's A Steady Space. That's the website, handles on socials. And then if anyone is interested in working with me one-to-one, it's also through my website. And otherwise, it's my groups that you can also find there. I'm not really an Instagram person. It's too cutesy for my taste, but apparently it's important that I stay on there. So I am there, but I'm predominantly on TikTok because it's more so just like unfiltered and all sorts of foul language.
Fantastic. So, well, that's where all of my clients get their relationship advice from. So you're in the right spot, I think. They come in and go, on TikTok I learned. And I'm like, oh my God, what are you going to tell me? So I'm glad you're on there to change people's
I'm trying to.
Unsolicited
advice. There's a lot of really bad advice out there. So I'm hoping that mine is solid enough.
It's so good. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here.
My pleasure, Beck. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the show.
If you got value from this, please don't hesitate to share with a friend so they can get value from this too. And don't forget to hit follow so you don't miss an episode. It's also how I keep this podcast alive.
Audience exclusive.